Welcome back to the Eastern Clash, where we are in the middle of the series between Tempest and MVP Black. We are tied up 1-1. Has anybody got any suggestions on where we're going to go for maps? Any thoughts that we want to get across of what we've experienced so far? I dropped my NA meta, kind of metaphor already, so I'm comfortable now because I've already gotten out.
You got it out there. You're feeling great.
I've never seen any other region react that way, and I never expected that from Korea, but I've been seeing it over and over, and it keeps getting worse and worse and worse, and so I had to drop it. I think
it's a pretty reasonable comparison right now. In terms of confidence and often arrogance, even you could say the North American region has always looked confident despite poor results, and it's like Korea is the opposite but the same. Because of their high results for such a long period, there's almost a level of confidence that leads towards this arrogant feel. But going back into that last game, I feel like we could talk about the X factor being Sake's fall stat. Something that didn't look like it made sense in the draft, but they made it work. It was a punish play against HA2. We saw him ganked, 3 times there with the fall stat. And even if the portals were there to keep him alive, everything was ruined. It was like a Dragon Knight every time they made the rotation, made the flight. And Sake has said in interviews many times he feels like there are 2 good fall stats in the world. It's him and Quagnix, of course, the fall stat player for Fnatic. He's like, no one else is playing the hero. It's only us, and only we understand how to play it. And it's really cool to see, even though Sake in the past wouldn't normally play it because he was the main mage, the main range DPS, now he's in the flex role, and it really shows he can split push far, can have those gusts and those engage.
I mean, you're talking about the direct but indirect manner of what fall set brings to a map, and that's, if you're a melee with no mobilities, you do not want to overstep, ever, because you're going to get caught out of position and get caught down. And we saw HA2 gank 3 times, and granted he didn't die, but you mentioned it, just having that passive play against an Illidan, or even the Falstad to a degree, is enough to make you lose out on a lane.
And we're going to be figuring out now where we're going to be going for game number 3. What is the battleground choice here? Because keep in mind, whenever you end up losing, you end up giving it over to your opponent to choose. Do you want the first pick, or do you in fact want the map pick? Tempest going to go with that first pick, and we're headed to Battlefield of Eternity.
It's one of MVP Black's best maps, and with the confidence and the momentum shift here, it might be, that they end up grabbing the next few maps. But if it gets taken away from them, they could get the map choices taken away from them. Obviously, if it ends up being kind of a wonky back and forth series, so you guarantee the BOE, at least no matter what, is in the remainder of the series with the pick grabbing it now. It's historically one of Black's best maps, and this is the map that most Koreans will tell you, and I also agree, where the draft affects the objective more than any other map. What you are able to accomplish with your poke and your dive here determines what you do when the objective is live. There are extraneous factors like split pushing, turret control, level 1s, the 4-man, but in terms of the objective, this map has such a strong draft to objective ratio.
Yeah, you have certain heroes that suddenly pop up just due to this battleground. And it's kind of interesting because that used to be the case in Europe for a while, and now it's starting to become more of a control-based type of thing, where you want to grab a split pushing, race towards that level 10, and then suddenly this Immortal, while it's a factor, it's not a factor at the same time.
I was just going to say that MVP Black was the first team to be like, we adore this map, and they put up some insane games, just winning in 8, 7, 6 minutes. It was constantly just bodying their opponents, but it has very much been, the rest of the world has kind of changed the approach to the map. That was the dominant one. Wait for the spike, all in, and just obliterate your opponents. But now it's play it slow, get the side soak, and whoever comes out on top with that typically is the one who ends up winning the map.
Yeah, and that's the thing is MVP Black takes this map so aggressively towards the objective, they usually don't focus on the split soak, and they were one of the teams that defined how this map was played back in spring 2016. I remember their series against E-Star at the Gold Series tournament where MVP Black was an invite along with TNL. They only went in that series, in that best of 7, for the Immortal. They never split push, they never split soak, they 5-manned it. They look to snowball by getting a heavy shielded Immortal. They don't want to win the Immortal, they want to crush the Immortal, to have those shields, to get the EXP that way by structural lead, get those early keeps. That's why they ran Sylvanas so often on this map in the past, to get that early lead, to get the level 10 and snowball it, as you said, Dread. This is going to be Illidan, and Li Ming makes the appearance. And this is a map, again, where it's the only map in Korea we ever see Li Ming on anymore because of the extra poke.
Is there any chance we get a signed Task Tracer here? Because it's Battlefield of Eternity and both are let through. Historically, this is the best map to run Task Tracer because the Pulse Bomb is so easy to prep there.
I think there's definitely a high chance, especially when you look at the fact that Illidan can't really evade that Pulse Bomb damage. Li Ming is not going to have a large health pool. She has mobility, but Tracer will be able to lock her down no matter what. I think it's too early to tell, especially with the early Tyrael pick here, but there's definitely a chance because only when we see the Task Tracer with Sign is when we see the Tyrael, because Sign is not confident on the Tyrael. It's an old pick for Honkono, so he can flex into that role. And then the DPS role, it's kind of a role swap. As Honkono is moved into the Tyrael, there's that open slot for Sign to play the Tracer. So definitely a possibility here, but I wouldn't say we could definitively know just yet.
I mean, I wouldn't mind seeing it just based on what you guys mentioned. We've seen from both Illidan and Mimi.
There it is.
And there it is. Dread with the God Calls. Pack it up. You're going home, man. You're good to go.
I'm just a host, you know?
He's just a host.
I'm just here to talk. That's
He's
it.
just the guy who says, welcome back, this is the prize pool, but he knows these things somehow.
I've got an inside, with Hyde there. Hyde and Lockdown, we're good friends, and they just feed me whatever their picks are going to be, and I just sit here and laugh as you guys guess it wrong.
They text him under the table.
I want that lifeline. Jeez, man.
I wish.
Well, Task Tracer obviously is going to be bringing the fight often to, of course, this Li Ming and Illidan composition, which means we're going to be seeing a lot of fighting here from Tempest. They tend to engage pretty often, so I'm actually very excited to see this. We're going to see what the ban will be coming out from MVP Black. What do they get rid of? Do you move out that Uther? Do you try to stay away from it? Or do you decide to pick him up on your side and help him out with that Illidan?
I mean, for me, I'd be like, I want Uther on my team 100%. Yeah. I think that is going to be a prime focus for them. I think a lot of the question goes, like, is Arthas going to be a problem? It works well with Tyrael. It's not terrible in their composition. There we see the focus onto the ban. But the biggest thing for me that I wanted to know, and why the Task Tracer kind of stands out beyond just the map and how effective it can be, is into the Illidan and being able to constantly get those auto attacks. It's very hard to be able to evade her because she has legitimately infinite damage with her reload system, especially post-16. And that's a big nuisance for Illidan.
And we also see a lot of Tracer players on this map. Well, I say a lot, but oftentimes when we see Sign play Tracer on this map is really what I should say, is we see the Untouchable coming out with the protection that Tastar provides Tyrael, and sometimes also the Uther, who's still available here. You grab the Untouchable, you continue to find that insane damage. You've got the recalls there to protect yourself, and in the late game, if you don't die, you become this unstoppable force. Muradin going to be very difficult to use to actually get the lockdown stuns here. I was wondering if there was the rare possibility that we might see a variant come in here for the taunt, for the lockdown, but it's not going to happen, it doesn't look like, here for MVP Black.
I do want to say that I hope this is going to be a Q build focused Muradin to be able to help with the race, because right now MVP Black, if they do commit, their race is ridiculous, and we already know you don't want to dance around Task Tracer for long periods of time on BOE, so I think that that could be a really cool adjustment. Otherwise, I feel like that Muradin will be a bit misplaced.
The only worry that I have with that Q build coming in there is, will they be able to build tanky? I think when you move into 13 to 16, you could still transition into a tanky Muradin and be just fine, so wouldn't mind seeing it. In fact, we see it most of the time in Korea, that Q build setup on BOE. Now looking over to Tempest here, looking for their 4th and 5th pick. Are they going to attempt to move into a second support, which they should be doing here, and maybe grab a little bit more damage and have a solo Tyrael running in, or are they going to look for more control? Here's that Rhaegar, and the Artanis comes out.
I'm not so sure about this Artanis pick. I mean, it can be good, obviously, and in the soul lane, can win it. Hammer is just for the extra poke. Looks like what MVP Black wants to do here is take the defensive engages, wait for the dive-ins. I think we will see that Q build from Muradin. We might even see Pierce here with the Artanis coming out. It's growing in popularity right now in Korea. But the Artanis pick, the swaps, might just empower some of the heroes depending on how it's used for MVP Black. You swap a Muradin and, suddenly he can hit the Q and ruin your entire composition. So feels very risky what Tempest is trying to draft here.
I actually kind of like it. If Tempest can run this 4-man and just be on the opposing side of the map and constantly put pressure on their opponents, especially that Li Ming and that Sergeant Hammer, Artanis with amateur opponent, when he gets Suppression Pulse later on at level 10, does enough to delay out your opponent and burn down an Immortal. It does require a better dance, though. They have to be on point with their movement.
And you have to remember, too, that MVP Black has so much poke that if Sign gets picked off on the Tracer, assuming he'll be playing it, then it's going to be really risky for them. They're going to lose almost every Immortal if that happens, so they don't have the DPS.
So we're going to be kicking it off. Keep in mind, we are tied 1-1 between these teams on BOE game number 3. MVP Black will be in the blue with a very creative composition, busting out that old school Sergeant Hammer. That's been a Korean Battlefield of Eternity staple for a long while.
And it's one that's actually pretty solid against Tracer. When you get that focused attack at level 4, you can put a nice chunk on her when she comes in for the engage. So we'll look for that as Tempest on the right side in the red. We'll be showcasing this Tracer Artanis composition, and I want to see how they handle these races that will be going down.
Already we see that Tyrael's actually holding on to his level 1. I'm going to be curious to see if he decides to mix anything up other than going for the bonus smite damage that is pretty much the only go-to that most teams end up taking. My only thought would be protection in death, Well, with the Artanis, you want to go protection and death rather than the even and death. But if they think that there's going to be enough damage coming up from the Sergeant Hammer, that he's going to kind of be a sacrifice, that they want to dive on and make sure that Tracer later can go in and actually confirm the kill, which is a really cool way to play it out. Sadly, Hankono's going to stick to the norm. We got our pure evil smite damage.
This Tyrael is planning on living. How unfortunate, man. The engage gets...
Got to get that trait value.
You know? Sake, at the same time taking damage, though, is able to get on out. And Tempest in the early game, opening up with some solid fight in their 4-man on the bottom, while we still have that Illidan and Li Ming in the top focusing against the Artanis.
I do want to say that when looking at these comps, I would be surprised if this game makes it to 15 minutes. I don't know who's going to be most effective, but I think whoever it is going to have a really, really fun time in this game. That it is going to get out of control very quickly. More so with MVP Black than Tempest, but I think that, I mean, with H82 and the performance that he has, suddenly I'm re-gauging how effective their composition could be, maybe even better than I assumed originally.
Well, you were asking who might take a lead in this early game, and so far Tempest is making a strong case, as they have done well in their 4-man on the bottom, pushing that Sergeant Hammer for a small amount of time, but also finding the Li Ming and the Illidan on the rotation, getting in, getting harassment already, and causing some disruptions. However, Sergeant Hammer easily answered back by grabbing the turrets in the bottom, which gives a nice cushion of experience lead to MVP Black.
So here we are. It's going to be the Immortals right opening. H82, keep in mind, with that amateur opponent, it just deletes that Immortal, which you see the damage output so very high. The members of MVP Black looking to get the response. Pretty big orb there for reset, but for now, it is just testing the waters, getting the zoning. Meanwhile, we see Sergeant Hammer posted up on the block, got a little bit of damage out there into that Immortal. The swap here from H82.
H82 goes in with the swap, they look at reset, and they secure the kill. H82 still in the back line. If Rhaegar can get a heal on him, he'll be able to survive, but the heal missing out as Hyde is getting low on mana. At the same time, it's back and forth, but with lockdown under pressure from Rich, MVP Black will chase the red health bars away.
They guessed the wrong direction. The dismount from the immolation, though, is enough. Rich able to get that dismount, and lockdown is now fallen. Hyde ended up having to get the back here, and the members of MVP Black once again are going to siege right on up to this Immortal and kick off the halftime show.
Started out well there for Tempest, but their spread out that occurred in the middle of the map there, where Tracer and Rhaegar were on the bottom side looking at that Sergeant Hammer, allowed for Illidan to get the one-on-ones that he wanted, which allowed for him not to fall low on health, and he eventually took the runaway there. And as you mentioned, the halftime show hits, MVP Black takes a nice lead, and they already have Sergeant Hammer set up on the left side.
The race is going to be real between these teams. I don't know if MVP Black can win this into that amateur opponent. Tis is not late enough into the game where he is really that scary of a target to focus in.
31 health.
And at the end of the day, my caster math at least is respectably close. 31 points, and MVP Black, or excuse me, Tempest finds themselves that Immortal.
They have the Immortal here, and it will be pushing on the bottom side. Now, I am curious to how Tempest wants to handle this push. Pushing into a Sergeant Hammer and a Li Ming can be a bit on the difficult side until you break down those turrets. They're coming in looking for maybe a poke on Tis, but he'll be able to jump out at any point, while Artanis has head back to the top lane. So for now, Tempest will take the easy route. They're going to push him to the bottom, and we're just getting turrets and be content with that. While Sake will have to play slow and careful on his back left side. He's already taking a lot of poke.
And we talked about how it's not common within the eastern regions to play that slow controlled game, especially within Korea. You know, China at times, they have different approaches to the map, and I think it's unfair to kind of group them into that category, but Korea definitely kind of shows those trends. But with the Sergeant Hammer, you have the option to go both ways. She's one of the few heroes that actually can function in both styles of strategy. So I'm curious to see, now that we've hit kind of closer to the mid game, do we see post 10 Sake is concentrating on taking out forts or keep front walls while the Immortal race is being contested?
Would be interesting to see that. It does require you to have a full understanding of where your opponents are at. You have to watch out for that point that can come in. Sergeant Hammer, while Immobile still has some mobility, she has upper charge in her mount to get out, so we'll watch out for that, as we have HA2 coming in for a flank, barely missing out on the phase prism, and will be forced to pull away.
Sake has got to be, you know, thankful for having that passive available. Throwing on his thrusters, he can make his way on out of there. We also have to keep in mind that now that we have made a post 7, specifically for the Malfurion, being able to better set up Reset's ability to hit those Li Ming orbs. I absolutely adore the Korean Malfurion build. Personally, I feel like it's neglected in the western half of the world, not given enough credit for the impact it can have. But we also know, you know, Korea just flat out adores Malfurion in general compared to the rest of the
Yeah, they heavily favor that Malfurion. We even see him picked over potential heroes that are up, like Rhaegar, which Rhaegar, I would say, in the EU is played a little bit more often than that Malfurion side. Now, over to Tempest, I am worried about the level 10 here. I think MVP Black has a much stronger level 10 with the Hunt into an Engage, Li Ming combo into Sergeant Hammer. Maybe even getting a BFG could be great here for burst. And I think Tempest, while getting to 13 to 16, will be solid as they'll be able to finally handle that Muradin and get the engages they want. May want to float around with some Immortal and try to race it down ASAP, because team fights when getting to 10 will be difficult for them to win.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the BFG is most likely what we're going to see. The burst damage is really threatening onto the most of the members of Tempest. And now that we made it to the mid-game, the Shaman Camp is timed very, very well for MVP Black, able to deal with that of Tempest. But they've also gotten a significant disadvantage onto the Immortal race. Rich taking the Pulse Bomb, and Sign finds himself a kill.
And this is where Tracer is very happy to be. Once you get that first kill and you have the Tassadar shields coming out, she can continue the aggression. The Immortal race goes heavily into the favor of Tempest as they have all 5 members up. They're going to go ahead and tap on up and bring themselves back to the fight. For now, MVP Black has had a chance to actually set up though and defend. So I wouldn't mind seeing them spreading out, getting members into different lanes here until Illidan comes back to the fight and then converge in that area.
And this is why Sergeant Hammer is so effective on the map like Battlefield of Eternity. You can just sit into that middle area and constantly be a threat, both offensively and defensively. H82 goes in for the swap there, is able to get deterred thanks to Sergeant Hammer. Sign is going to go ahead and drop one of his teleport charges, but we need to keep looking at the Immortal HP here. There's 10,000 damage that is between the two. Tempest is doing such a good job with that Tassadar Tracer. This is why it is such a huge threat on this map. It just poke around, poke around. Oh, I've got the Pulse Bomb. Let's find ourselves a kill.
Yeah, that's the strength of Tracer, going from that level 0 to 100 that quickly whenever you have that Pulse Bomb coming online. Hit pop? I did just hit pop. I just went in for it, man. I've been listening to a lot of rap the last couple days. Thank you, Dread, for that playlist. You know what I'm saying? They're not going to miss.
That was not very good.
Dang it, man. No less here. Tempest still moves in, gets the Immortal low on health, and they're looking for the fight. MVP Black is. They're chasing forward here. Hankano low on health. He may have to sacrifice himself and try to blow up the Immortal. Not
going to be enough. Sadly, 601 HP still remains. A lot of damage going on to Hyde, though. He's not going to be able to make it out. Sadly, that Pupper is running the wrong direction. Reset. Got the final auto attack, got the dominance proc, and heals right on up. H82 is just going to buy time at best here for Tempest. They do have a very healthy Immortal coming online, but with those staggered deaths, they are going to be set back significantly.
Yeah, H82 just trying to get us trade up there to live a little bit longer, but you're right. Tracer was able to grab that Immortal, which I think is a good saving grace. Had that Immortal sat at 600 health, and when MVP Black moved in and grabbed the Immortal himself, we see them pushing down a lane, breaking down the fort. Tempest can be happy with this exchange, even though it's not the most fortunate one. And at least now, they can sit back, wait for level 10 to hat, regroup, and come back into the fight. But again, we talked about it earlier. MVP Black at level 10. How scary they could be.
Are we going to see any unique heroic choices? Maybe the blind going in. Hyde just eating a full hunt coming out there. The Haymaker setting things up for Tist.
Tist has watched Hankano the last couple days.
BFG is still the choice for, for the Sergeant Hammer, but we're yet to see if it's going to be the Purifying Beam still for H82. Into an Illidan Sergeant Hammer composition, there's a huge argument to go blind.
Yeah, I would say the Suppression Pulse is the way you have to go here, but hang on, Reset is just chunking people. Tracer, Tassadar, no longer on the field.
They are just done here with Tempest. Hankano threw down his Q, but keep in mind, with Heroic or Forging at level 4, unless you hit anybody, you do not get any CDR. And even if you hit one, it's still a long while until you have 100% uptime. And it is, in fact, the Suppression Pulse. We're going to see the blind coming online. But with how dominant MVP Black has been over the past couple of seconds and minutes here, I wonder if that's going to be enough to stop the momentum that they have in this fight.
Yeah, Tempest needs to find the reground here, and getting to level 13 is one of the best things they can do. Get that triple strike so you can combo that with the amateur opponent, and then from there you can put pressure on your Sergeant Hammer, the Li Ming, get them to back away from the fight and buy Artanis room. But even then, MVP Black has shown that they have the tools here to force fights, get into the action here, lock down that Tracer and that Tassadar, which might not even allow Artanis and crew to become effective until 16 comes in. We can actually handle that Muradin.
Both teams focusing on to their Shaman camps currently. It's all about who can time theirs the best. Tempest, you see Hyde waiting in the wakes. He's going to wait and time it with the Immortal, while MVP Black picking up theirs a little bit more. The hunt goes down. Stormbolt was used, and now Reset's looking to join in, but not enough members there for MVP Black to get that initial burst. Can they clear up the Shamans? Because those are such a big focus for these teams. You never want to leave that Shaman off alone, especially for Tempest here, because they're struggling when looking at the structures. They're hurting when it comes to the talent tiers. They need some kind of victory.
That they are hurting. And I know that we've been talking about MVP Black and their strengths right now, but again, I got to shout out HGC and the movement with the Zartanis there. Using the blade dash in the top right, he feinted like he would go for a God Top just to prevent MVP Black from moving forward and going for a kill on his opponent. That strength there, the respect that Black is giving Tempest when it comes to that Artanis, admirable. I love seeing that movement.
We see the Haymaker coming out for Tis, but that's a very short cooldown. I know it's not a heroic we see too often, only shows up once in a while, typically from the Korean region. But I mean, it's 40 seconds. You know, you can kind of throw it out, just be like, eh, was this effective? If not, we'll be back. Coming online in a couple of moments. Rich is doing his best, though, onto the Immortal to restore the HP. And it looks like this is going to be enough with the 1-4 split to set Tempest away, and we'll find MVP Black pulling ahead onto that Immortal raise.
There it is. The Immortal raise continues to be heavily here for MVP Black, and they need 13, but they are still 3/4 experience away, and Tempest needs to make a decision. It's judgment time. Do we go clear out, get 13, and just hold out for the moment, or do we try to force a fight? And right now, they're forcing a fight.
The Hunt's going to go in onto Hyde.
Nice
Sanctification drop, hitting a 3-man. Very good Sanctification, but not too many members moving forward. Beautiful dimensional shift. The swap lands on the Reset.
He got it. Oh, I love it. The swap over the wall. He turns around. He looks at Tis, and H82 continues to be the best Artanis in the world.
This guy is a monster when he's on the Artanis. My goodness, now the stun landing there. Beautiful recall from Sign. He avoids the damage. Tis is going to be on the
Give me another swap. Give it to me. And, oh, the ice block, but it hits Tis anyways. He turns around. Hyde goes in. Hunt comes out. The Ancestral Healing. Team HG2 will be living for now, while Rich is going to be going and running away from the fight. But the first swap into the second engage buys the room for Tempest, despite being a talent tier down, to grab the Immortal.
The problem is we've already seen them with a low shielded Immortal. We know how good their siege composition is. You know, I hate to break it to you. Wait a minute, if Rich gets cut out, this could be a huge victory. Now Tempest has got the man up for 30 seconds. I was just complaining about their lack of siege, but they don't need a siege composition if they've got a man up. So Tempest now needs to open up this map and really start opening up a lethal, more importantly than anything here, versus MVP.
Tis needs to be careful here. What is he doing? Going forward a little bit too aggressively. If you had perhaps Avatar there, I could see a world where that was an okay play. But still, he got a little bit too aggressive. It gets taken out.
The Immortal is dealt with, but both forts are now caught. Suddenly we find ourselves in a world where Tempest, after the miracle swap from H82, it's unfair to say a miracle. He does it so consistently. Just H82 doing what he does on a daily basis. But now they're in a situation where they're leading structurally, and that is huge for them. They now have the opportunity to where maybe the next Immortal can secure themselves a keep, or if it's got enough shielding, it could be the core. So let's take a breather. Let's think about how these fights have gone down, because Tempest has not actually won a traditional 5 versus 5. Anytime a God swap happens, let's be real here, it doesn't matter what the comp is, it's probably going to win the team fight.
Sure.
So we now need to say, if this variable doesn't exist, does Tempest still win these team fights? And I'm not convinced, at least not quite yet, that that is the case, Trick.
I think they can, simply because of what they got at level 13, the Graviton Vortex, which, again, does come down to the swaps, but you don't need the God swaps there. Your idea of that fight is trying to find that Malfurion, trying to find that Sergeant Hammer. Even if you don't land it on either of those two, if you hit it nearby somebody there, you get the engage that you want, which allows Tracer to come in, get that false bomb up, and cause chaos in the fight, which is where Tracer and Taskmaster thrives.
I want to say another thing to be focusing on too as well here is the fact that MVP Black's got the Twilight Dream Malfurion into a CC-less composition. Going to be honest, if a God swap happens at the wrong time, I would like to see Malfurion wear it intentionally. Nobody's going to stop your Twilight Dream. Use that as the bolt, pre-20. Enable yourself into the members of Tempest, and worst case, you bait a Sanctification, because that's the only way you can negate that huge impact play that we might see out of Kyocha.
Well, here we go. Both teams hitting level 16, Immortal spawn for both of them. And Tempest will get the start on the race, while Lockdown, beautiful play here, is dropping Side Storm to slow down Black in the rotation in.
Really good dismounting there. Not enough to... Oh, will it be? No, it's not enough to be able to start the phase, but even then, it really doesn't matter. Keep in mind, there's no holy ground this game. Once again, we see from Tempest, they're going to move into the blood for blood there. More concentration onto being able to get a kill. And on a map like BOE, especially into a hammer, I thought for sure this would be that lockdown and securing the H82 swaps.
I mean, look at the middle of this map right here. You have 4 amazing holy ground spots in it that really compounds with the rest of the battleground. But Han Kano, man, he really believes in this blood pickup at level 16.
I mean, it's very effective at making sure you get the kill target dead. I mean, there used to be a meta where back in the day you would just stack as many blood for bloods as you possibly could.
The good old days. I remember those times.
Yeah, that was right after the Resurgence meta. That was pretty much the highest skill cap of competitive Heroes of the Storm that existed.
Well, Dread's a little salty about that. Back to this game as Tempest continues to poke on the side here, and we have a swap finally hitting. It's going to be a hunt, but Sergeant Hammer with the Graviton Vortex coming in is going to fall. Rich taking the Pulse Bomb, and he'll get picked too.
He got himself a parting gift, but it wasn't even necessary. Now Sign is moving in. Hankono with the smite. Kyocha only has a matter of seconds unless they decide to show mercy.
No.
Ice Block is just stopping the inevitable.
Never mercy in Heroes of the Storm. Kyocha will fall. They're looking for another here. Reset on the side. HA2 goes in for the swap. Misses out on it. Tis taking damage at the same time while the Immortals back home are just begging to be taken down.
That Shaman camp has been sieging away up at top the entire time. Nobody on MVP Black's been able to deal with that. And now Tempest is going to rotate and transition, take the free keep, and they are still dominating when it comes to this Immortal race trick. This very likely could be the game if MVP Black doesn't find a way to stop.
Especially with the Immortal just being so large in health, nearly 30k in health for a shield here to push forward. And the thing is Tempest has 2 ways to play this. A, you can push into the Sergeant Hammer that will be defending the Immortal, which is difficult, but at least you have Graviton Vortex. Or B, you grew up on the top lane and you pressure them so hard that you may threaten a core.
I think this is it. I don't see any way MVP Black can stop this.
They fight right now. They get in the bush right where the Immortal spawns, and they jump on a target.
Okay.
And
I mean, that's got to be it, right? You
Yeah.
have to dive past. We see onto the side, Tis is waiting. He's got the Haymaker. Keep in mind, he could just throw him into a Twilight Dream BFG, explosion, but he needs to make sure he gets the proper playmaker. There we go. Rich starting off with the hunt. He's going to hit high.
Tis Rhaegar.
Thrown right in, but nobody's going to drop the Sanctification's enough to negate it. Twilight Dream is whipped.
Ankana with the Sanctification. Hyde, though, still low on health. He finally gets picked, but Illidan falls as well. Tempest running with no support here. It's just Tassadar and Tracer moving forward. We have Sake taking a hit. He is going to barely live thanks to Kyocha. Tisso hoping to do the same.
And now, with a 1-member dead on the side of Tempest, 2 here, soon to be 3, it looks like. I mean, realistically, it's not even going to matter. That shielding onto the Immortal is still here, and now they're going to transfer over towards the core. MVP Black is now going to find themselves possibly 2 games down, or 1 game down, excuse me, versus Tempest. How is this going? They said that they weren't going to drop a game. They said that they were going to be better than they have ever been before, and here they may lose a series.
HA2 leading the charge here for Tempest. They'll get the core victory, and you're right, it's 2-1 in favor of Tempest, and woof.
I mean, for me, this is now, I believe, the 4th time. Every time I doubt the Sign Tracer, I always end up being wrong. I never believe, and it looks really strong. There were a few problems for MVP Black, namely that whenever the Immortals spawned, they never had control to start off, which meant HA2's already wailing on. And when you look at what the end draft, the end result for MVP Black was not a dive comp, it was a poke comp. So when you're trying to dive in onto an Artanis comp, especially once he gets his talents going up for the swaps later on in the game, you're trying to dive that with a Li Ming, a Sergeant Hammer, a Muradin that doesn't have survivability. I feel like the plays that we saw there from Tis, taking the Haymaker, ended up being a liability more than a boon. When he first locked it in, he got that really cool pick onto Rhaegar. That was sick, but beyond that, it was just another reason why you would pick the Blood for Blood. He doesn't have the Avatar, he doesn't have that survivability. They couldn't have those dive fights. The Sanks were really good, and I mean, MVP Black, I feel like, didn't show the respect to the comp that they needed, and I think the lack of Avatar meant that when they needed to dive in, they just couldn't do it because they didn't have that health pool.
And I know you might be tired of me gushing about the Artanis all the time here.
I promise you I'm not. He's the only guy when you want to hype up Artanis. Like, if you talk about any other player, I'll honestly be triggered. But until then, I'm good with it.
The moment that Haymaker was locked in, that's the moment that his build changed. It didn't go into the triple strike into Titan Killer, which you would use to break down a Muradin Avatar. By the way, let's go and check this fight here where we have the signification that was well done here to stop the BFG.
Twilight Dream hits nobody in this moment, by the way. This is the 6th swap over the wall. This is probably the most incredible swap we've seen this tournament. I mean, H82 has done quite a few in his career, but at this high-stakes match against such a team as MVP Black, this is just on another level. The Twilight Dream completely whiffing is just really unfortunate for Kyocho, who hasn't really made a great case for the Malfurion here, unfortunately, and they just have more mobility here for the chase. Honkono's diving in, and this is basically going to be the end. We see the swap over the wall. Dodge here by Kyocho is real, but Tisty doesn't have the Avatar here, and will have to retreat, but this is just one of many fights that were kind of won defensively here when they had control of the Immortal first, and Black is forced to dive in. They just can't make it happen. Another swap here from HA2. The hunt completely cleansed there, and I mean, the Illidan pick, it seemed strong in the early parts of the game, but when the draft moved more towards range, they needed to fight before the Immortal phase, get an advantage there, but without Avatar, without the ability to dive in and get those picks, I feel like, I'm not saying the entire game was lost by that heroic choice, but it just limited their options so much.
That clip is going on my desktop, and every time I queue into Hero League, I'm going to watch it and get inspired.
But then that means you're going to auto-lock it left and right constantly and then fail those swaps, and then you're going to keep looking at that and going, just lying to yourself, essentially. Saying,
I'm willing to suffer the rank.
I'm going to let you know right now, Trick, that's never going to be you. At this
that
point,
hurts, Dread. I would never come to you and be like, Dread, you cannot do this. Dread, you cannot host. I would not have came in and told you that today.
It's a true statement, though.
You two toxic NA casters up here on the desk.
Hey, I'm adopted EU. Thank you very much.
But we're going to quickly take another look at another amazing replay we had there out of Battlefield of Eternity. Wolf, what are your thoughts here?
All right, well, let's look at this fight here. This one's actually an engage from HA2. Look at this double swap here. Tista's caught in the middle. You see the Archon comes up. There is the silence coming down, the immediate Ancestral. And look at this pulse bomb accuracy, really good for Sign. Rich doesn't have the protection. The Parting Gift even adds some extra damage, and there's no retreat here. Tista's doing what he can to peel right now, but he's just not that tanky. Can't commit further. He's just trying to slow Sign down, but there's not enough chase. He went for the Q build, as you guys were talking about. He went, of course, for the Pierce. He wanted to make sure he could pierce through to get those stuns, but they were not consistent, and he always had to be more cautious about his positioning in those fights. We saw the really good cleanse that totally, again, nullified the hunt coming out from Rich, and his Illidan play today overall hasn't been that outstanding, to be honest, even though it was one of the big factors we were talking about going into this best of 5.
Well, they've been doing a good job of also stopping that double support to set up that Illidan that you would normally have. We've had one support in 2 of the matches out of 3 so far, so it's been pretty strong, but I also got to shout out Honkono with that sanctification towards the end there. There was only one way for MVP Black to even defend that Immortal Rush that was coming their way, and that was for the Muradin flank into a Rhaegar Haymaker, and he put the sanctification down perfectly where you would have that Rhaegar caught to be killed out.
Turns out when you are the innovator of Haymaker, it's pretty easy to be able to deal with it.
He was ready. He was like, I got this.
It's why nobody can pick, Artanis into H82. He's just going to body.
I mean,
Bam.
Swap is kind of like Haymaker in a lot of ways, but it could hit 2 people, and it's on a lower cooldown, and it's like a longer range. I don't know. It's just kind of a better version of Haymaker in a lot of ways. You don't have to Dwarf Toss in and then try to hit it in a weird angle that you don't have your escape. You're just going to get a lot more value, I think, overall. And I like the idea because sometimes you do see that snap lock, and it's a very MVP Black thing to do. Is, okay, we hit 10. This is this one moment. I'm going to get this pick. We're going to take advantages from that. When they got the Rhaegar kill, they rotated bot. They got 2 more kills. Resets popping off on the lead main. It looks like, oh, man, they might snowball this game. But after that one moment, after that one part of control they had with the Haymaker, it just never was able to get them anything else for the remainder of the game.
Well, we've already been to 2 of the small maps here in this series. MVP Black just took us to Battlefield of Eternity, but with that loss, we're going to find out where game number 4 is going to be headed. And it looks like this is going to be not Team Face Check selecting this, but we're going to Infernal Shrines, and I'm assuming this is Tempest.
Yeah, it looks to be the case with them having the win. You would imagine MVP Black is going to take first pick here, so we're going to Infernal Shrines. And if you've been following MVP Black for global events throughout the years, you might think, oh my god, Rich Kerrigan, PogChamp is going to happen, but I don't think we're going to see it in this particular game, sadly.
Man, I miss Kerrigan, dude.
I mean, you've got the double support meta coming back, can protect her and heal her, but there are better options, I feel like, for Melee right now, unfortunately.
I mean, you don't have to sell me on it, man. I feed all the time on Kerrigan. I know. She kind of hurts right now.
I've seen a few clips of that recently.
Going into Infernal... Oh, yeah, you're right. There was one the other day. So going into Infernal Shrines here, I'm actually kind of curious to see how it's going to fan out for MVP Black, because besides game number 2 on Dragonshire, where we had that bonkers moment where Simon was in the top left corner going for invade and nobody helped him, I feel like movement has been much better here for Tempest so far. They've come together as a team adamantly every single time. So going into Infernal Shrines, that should be something that carries over pretty well moving into Shrine Control.
I think I would completely agree with you. But then again, I feel like this, well, what version of what team's going to show up,
Sure.
right? Do we get that kind of coin